Today we're going to expose my old writing because I'm in a writing slump. And I have been writing the zero draft for Project House of Stone for a couple months now. Wow, has it been a couple months? I guess so. It's now been a couple months. And so much has changed. My story has changed drastically. I can't wait to share those updates with you guys, but I want to really compile all of that for you in a bigger video. So until then, you have me doing videos like this. I'm also working on a lot of really cool writing craft videos, but they're taking a lot longer because I want to make sure everything is researched, done well, and just that I'm making the best content that I can for all of you. So today we'll be exposing myself on the internet, not in that way, like in you guys know what I mean, like in a writer's way. And we're going to read some of my old writing. I've never done this. I barely read my old writing. I barely share my writing. And I also don't have a lot of my old writing. If you've watched my videos, you know that I went to college as a creative writing major. I've written multiple manuscripts before. I lost a lot of that work because I was a young idiot at one point who did not back up her work on her computer, and my computer broke because water spilled on it, and I lost everything. It put me into a huge writing slump for a couple of years, and I've been slowly crawling my way out of it the last year or so. I did, however, find some old writing that I can't wait to share with you all because I had an Evernote account in college and I recently got into it and I found out that I had so many writing snippets from college, from like writing exercises. So I saved all of those. I also found really old snippets of writing in there. And then I have writing post losing everything. There needs to be like a timeline, like before computer crisis, after computer crisis. So I have some writing BCC and ACC that we get to expose here. It's kind of funny because in college, I was really used to sharing my writing. That's basically what I did for my degree. We would write, share it, get feedback, give others feedback, analyze story, the whole nine. So many times. But I haven't shared a lot of writing outside of my writing college classmates. I've had a lot of online internet friends, but not a lot of writing friends that I've been close enough with that I've actually let them read my writing. So this is a vulnerable moment for me. I'm letting the internet read my writing. So please do not hold my writing against me. I was younger. I'm almost old now. I'm almost a 30-year-old in my little granny sweater with so many years under her belt. And this is writing from a time where I was definitely still finding myself, finding my voice, the whole nine. Okay, let's jump into it. So we're going to start here, which is snippets. See, this is like Evernote docs up at the top. This was from my time in college. There's about 21 pages. And in college, I actually specialized in creative nonfiction, believe it or not, which really just meant that like my capstone courses were nonfiction classes. I took both fiction and nonfiction classes, as well as a ton of just English literature and story analyzing classes. I took editing classes, so many things, and fun classes like Lord of the Rings classes, Harry Potter, a lot of fun stuff, a lot of hard stuff. I got a good mix of fiction and nonfiction, but I did technically major in creative nonfiction. One of the prompts that we got must have been, where I am, start by looking at the carpet. And I think I do remember this teacher. He was a little wackier. He was very, very fun. And I remember writing this piece Yeah, I remember writing this piece and I think I had to read it out loud and he said, you should keep this. So that is what I'm doing and this is what I'm reading. So I'm assuming this is a creative nonfiction piece, but we will see. We're starting by looking at the carpet. Our professor told us to look at the carpet, and so I did. As soon as I did upon instruction, it was as if this mundane gray carpet that I had always walked on really opened up to me. It wasn't gray like I had thought it was, but instead it was blue and purple and maroon and gold. It had been more colorful than I had given it credit for, and I immediately apologized to the carpet. It seemed ridiculous in my head, apologizing to carpet, but I felt better. It was like the time I apologized to my mother for almost the same thing, for not seeing her blue, purple, maroon, or even gold. But instead, before the apology, I had seen her as a mundane gray. A carpet that I'd walked on every day for years now, something I thought I knew by heart. But I didn't know her as I should, just how I didn't know the carpet. For my mother was blue and purple, maroon, and gold with green and silver even woven in. She was something beautifully crafted, and I didn't realize that I had been crafted from the same magnificent and colorful thread until I saw the picture of her that was wedged into my parents' wedding album. It was out of place. The photo had no spot underneath the clear cellophane home that all of the other photos had. Instead, this one was recklessly on its own, aside from the others. At first, I had only seen the back, faded and with the date scrawled 1986. When I turned it around, it was a picture of my mother walking down our street, for I live in the same house that she grew up in. That's true. I did grow up in my mother's house. Her hair was wild, curls that only a perm could provide, that stuck out in almost a perfect circumference around her face. Her face had a laugh I had never heard before, as the only laughs I heard from her now were polite ones. But it was the jacket that got me. A jean jacket covered in patches of every color imaginable, some even overlapping to the point where the original blue was faded, but was instead this beautiful mirage of blue and purple, maroon and gold and everything in between. It showed who she was. There were patches of bands I had never heard of, and sayings that I could never imagine coming out of my mother's mouth. Icons and symbols that either stood for something or nothing at all. But all of this together painted a portrait of my mother that I had never seen. Her jackets aren't patched over now. They're just gray. No color in them. Who she was laughing at or who was taking the picture, I don't know. But I kept that photo. I kept it around with me in high school, looking at it every now and then until it dropped out of a textbook one day and onto my lap. Again, the photo is so ever out of place. But I took it to her, to my mom, and I said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I never saw her this way, and that I didn't see her as this at all. But now sometimes when I look, I can see it. That laugh almost creeping out, or her hair almost about to stand on end in moments of happiness, or when she sings along to Duran Duran in the kitchen making dinner. I'll probably also never look at this carpet the same again. I got a little choked up. Not my best writing in general. Wow, guys, crying on Maine. Not the best writing in general, but I do remember writing this. And it's funny because I have to say, I don't even know if this photo is a true photo, but it is an amalgamation of photos that I've seen in the past of my mom, right? And the scene of me apologizing to my mom is not a scene that happened, but that's creative nonfiction. A lot of it is truth and half-truths. It's the truth of creative nonfiction is your heart and the emotion behind it. And I remember having a lot of discussions about that. It's do I have to remember everything in my life? I think I actually have something in here. Just scroll up. Oh my God, this is so insane. Don't look. See, I think I wrote this up. This must have been a rambling where we just had to like write in the beginning of class, because this is like, I'm worried that I don't have a story to tell. I guess that's a cliche, huh? I'm sorry a lot of students. That doesn't make sense. I don't know. A lot of students who go into a nonfiction workshop have the same fear. See, I'm not unique. Maybe that's the fear, that I'm not unique. At 22 years old, you would assume that you have life figured out. At least when I was 16 years old, I would look at the older kids and look in awe of how they seemed to walk without a care in the world. Now at 22, I'm hunched over with the weight of my canvas backpack. The bags under my eyes no longer coverable by $2 Drug Mart cover-up. Ain't that the truth? Am I beating myself up? I beat myself up too much. Look how melodramatic I was, guys, at 22. The melodrama. Right, but this is obviously, I know that at the start of class, we had a couple teachers in both fiction and nonfiction classes where we just had to write. It was like stream of consciousness writing, and I really miss that practice. So this must have been it, because what am I saying here? Oh my gosh, like look at this. I don't even know if I'm going to graduate. Honestly, college was a dark time. The future is a scary place. On one hand, it could show you everything you've ever wanted happening right in front of you. On the other hand, it's a black hole. I don't know if I'm going to graduate. How would Oma think of me now? Oma was my grandmother. It has been 5 months since Oma has passed. I have a callus on my left pinky where her ring sits, so even when I take it off, it's there. Do I write about family? How the relationship between my mother and I has grown? Do I write about my relationship? How it's crumbling like old paper right before my eyes? That was me and my ex, guys. And it did crumble. Do I write about how I feel? Nothing. Ugh, these were dark times for me, guys. I'm so sorry. What about these make my story worth telling? Is my story worth telling? What's my story? I wonder if I'll ever be good at nonfiction because my memory is horrible. This is what I was talking about. I can't remember a lot of details about dates, conversations, feelings, etc. Maybe I should learn to meditate. Who am I kidding? I can't ever shut off my mind. Oh my God, I don't want to write anything melodramatic. You did. You did. Future you is saying you're a little melodramatic. Even though we read about all the pain that one time, I still don't want to have to. I don't want the glances to change or the thoughts to say, oh, she is that girl. That is so funny. Because that's kind of what's happening now, right? Like in this paragraph, this is stream of consciousness, 22-year-old Michaela going through a really dark time. My grandmother, who is my spirit, like she's my soul. You know, she passed away in college and I was having a really, really, really hard time. In general, that made everything worse. But it's so funny that like past me is like, I don't want to write anything melodramatic. These sentences don't make sense, but I'm saying because it's a snapshot of my feelings at the time. And so you don't want people in the future to read it, to glance at it, read it like we are now and think, oh, she's like that sad, depressed girl, you know? So that's kind of funny because that's kind of what I'm judging my past self. But I have to remind myself that is just, this is a snapshot of the past. This is like a day in the past. And I know this was a dark time for me. And I'm like so different from the girl that wrote these words. That girl no longer exists, but wow. I wonder if I'll ever be good at nonfiction because my memory is horrible. And I'm actually wondering if I wrote this during a pre-write session for class and then me and my professor talked about this because I asked about it because I was worried because my memory isn't great. And I was like, how am I supposed to write these personal essays about things that happened to me in the past if I don't remember very specific moments? And she did say, like, it's okay. Scenes can be quote unquote made up, but they're going to be, like I said before, like an amalgamation of things coming into one scene that makes the most sense for the essay. What's fun is I'm looking at like the prompt that that my professor gave us, and I'm remembering the day that we wrote it, which is crazy. So I do remember this is from one of my favorite professors. She actually has a book out and I highly recommend reading it. Her name is Kelly Sundberg and she is fantastic. And she gave us a prompt of no adverbs. So this was another one of the free writing sessions in the beginning of the day where we just had to, at the beginning of the class, we just had to like write, which is why there's a lot of like mistakes. Like that's not how you spell greater, but you know, you're writing really, really fast. So let's see what I wrote with no adverbs, which is such a fun, I don't know, interesting prompt. He's still stuck in Vermont, she said, her head leaning in closer to the candle that was in the middle of every table. I've never been to Vermont, the man across from her said casually, as he slouched more into the red booth away from her. He had ordered a salad where he was picking off every nut on top and placing it onto an extra dish. She ordered a steak, untouched. Instead, her hands held the knife and fork out, hovering over the meat, as if at any moment it would dive in, and she would too. Okay, I think I understand what I was trying to say there, but it wasn't worded properly. But they didn't. I stared at the steak and then back at my own plate. It looked a lot better than what I had. Vermont, she said, the word as if it was cheese coming out of a cheese grater. Her teeth tightly closed together, squeezing the syllables out separately. Fucking Vermont. But she still kept her mouth into a half smile. Any passerby would have thought they were having a lovely conversation. How's the soup, hun? Shh, I said, motioning to my husband to stop. He did. I missed what the man said, but by now he had successfully plucked off every last pecan and almond and dug into the salad. She still didn't touch her steak. You're going to leave our son? She cleared her throat and smiled apologetically as if there was someone to apologize to, since her voice rose a few octaves. Okay, guys, this is about to be a lot. Speaking of melodrama, one of the manuscripts that I wrote all the way through, but this is snippets before it actually ever got drafted up. So this is like pre me sitting down and writing this draft, was something that I pitched as Peter Pan meets Fight Club. Okay. YA, contemporary novel. Yeah. Yep. You can get all you need to know from that. Let's read a snippet from this. Apparently I was listening to Charlie Brown by Coldplay, which if I remember correctly, I really took inspiration from that Coldplay album for this book. But anyways, my pinky stretched before me, standing out among the others. It was as if I had wound a tight rubber band around it moments before, watching the blood rush to the top, or as if I had slightly dipped the tip of my pinky in a rosy purple paint. A violent act would not have caused this shade to appear on my skin, but now I feel branded by this bruise. I admired it like a painting as Jonah's bruise came to mind and the pleasure faded away. My bruise was a purple stamp. His was a dark storm cloud parading underneath his right eye that rained down the side of his cheek. Violence had happened there, not an accident. Yeah. How moody. How YA. Yeah. Okay. This is the same story. Like musings from the same story as this like Lost Boys V1 doc that I just read. And she said I admired like her bruise, like Jonah's bruise. Jonah was the main character. And if you see in this version, the name is different. This one's name is Oliver. And this is proof that I will never change. I will never change. I hate male names. I will never pick one that I like. I will always change them down with male names. Okay. I'm actually so nervous to read this. This is like, I don't know. These are all so embarrassing. Okay. Light. That was the first time he had seen light in what felt like days. Oliver slowly pried his eyes open as he got accustomed to his surroundings. The cool steel that touched his arms instantly became warmer as the light glared off the table and the bright walls. Guys, let me just say, this is a run-on sentence. This is hard to read. That's such a bad sentence. Wow, that's something I'm learning is like my sentence construction is really weak at this age for me. Just really weak. Like that is... We don't need "and the bright walls." Do you know what I mean? Like we don't need that. 3 men had joined him, each sitting across from him in chairs, talking to themselves as they spread out massive amounts of paperwork. Another kind of run-on sentence. Okay, I'll edit after. Turn my editing brain off, Michaela. We're just reading these for funsies. Okay. Oliver averted his eyes from theirs and instead looked towards the mirror. It was the first time that he had caught a glimpse of what he had looked like. He knew how bad it was from the pain that he felt, but looking at it in the light was a whole different story. He could see the bruises now, which had started to ache. His face was a sickening shade of yellow that was only exacerbated by the blinding light, and his eyes a deep purple that was accented by the deep dark lines of stitches on the right side of his forehead. I was going to stop, but I can't, because like, look at how long this sentence is. That's a sentence. Also, bruises turn yellow when they're like healing. So this is now like my editor brain going, right? Those are the things that I would highlight for myself. Let's just edit it. He is saying that the bruises are just now aching, but they are yellow, which usually means healed. Okay? This is a run-on sentence. Run-on sentence. And then lines of stitches. When did he get stitches? Okay, already editing my work. Once an editor, always an editor. I can't help it. Okay. Oliver closed his eyes again and looked at the back of his eyelids. Guys, if Oliver is looking at the back of his eyelids, we don't need to say that he closed them. Okay? It's obvious. If you're looking at the back of your eyelids, your eyes are closed. So it can just be Oliver looked at the back of his eyelids. You know? Okay? Which had turned a nice glowing shade of pink. Sure. When he opened them once more, he attempted to imagine who was behind the mirror. Maybe the officers who had found him or the lawyer he had been assigned, but Oliver knew his parents were there, staring out at their son, horrified as to what truths the light had uncovered. Again, this is YA, of course. Voices. Okay, see how I'm trying to do something here. I'm like, light. Voices. I kind of like it though. That makes sense. It's like this section, like he's disoriented, it feels, and he's adjusting to the light in his surroundings. So that's like what this paragraph's focused on. So now this is like, we're now leading into the voices he's going to be talking to. Okay? Voices. Breaking his imaginary eye contact, Oliver turned his head to the 3 who had joined him. I guess we already said that they joined him though, right? Anyways. His hands were fidgety on the icy exterior, but inside he still remained calm. It was as if after everything that had taken place in the last 24 hours, he had lost a piece of himself, and in return he had heightened all of his senses. Their words flew at him in crisp sounds. Vowels are round and accentuated, while each S left a linger in the air. He gazed blankly back at the 3 waiting for their introductions to end and for his cue to begin. He had spent the last 4 hours figuring out whether or not he wished to give it all up to bring down his empire. Let's just make a little note for me. Just make a little note for me. Why do I write men with empires? This needs to be psychologically looked at. It's so strange. He had thought of what to tell, what to withhold, and what to lie about. But all of his planning had gone out the window as soon as the middleman, a guy with whitening hair and dark eyes, spoke the words he had been waiting for. Go ahead. He's waiting for these guys to end their introduction so he could talk. How does he know what to say? One. And who are these people? Like, the readers have no idea. I'm assuming the investigators, but I don't know, you know? Okay. No one, he started, his voice hoarse and barely audible as he strained to form the words that had flooded his head, really plans on entering the draw. It's just something that happens. You are never sure when you will be in or when you will be out. It is all up to chance. I'm sorry, don't laugh at myself. But it's kind of funny. Some kids enter into the draw to impress someone, usually only to get beaten out. Usually only? Wrong. Okay. To get beaten out 5 seconds in. Some kids enter with pent-up aggression and have the opportunity to finally blow off some steam. Some just try to prove themselves, because here out on the streets, a good rep can lead to open doors. Michaela, what do you know about the streets? Nothing. But then some. He stopped to cough and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. We're born for it. Okay. That is so dramatic. And to be honest, I'm kind of like, I wrote this whole manuscript and it was not as melodramatic as this. But I do remember this book, and I think by its final stage, it got to a really good point. Definitely not as poorly written as these beginning musings, but it does show me how much time I take with each idea. Like, I have these ideas for years and years before, because this was like early college, like just going into college was this snippet. And I finished the manuscript for Lost Boys my senior year of college. It's like 4 years time. The book became so different, but I do remember it starting out as kind of like a Never Back Down inspo, which if you've never watched Never Back Down, so good. Okay, so I'm back, but it's a different day. And, just reading your work takes a lot out of you, and I wasn't picking the best choices. I did find, actually, in Google Docs, years ago, still ACC, after the computer crash, an early version of the project I'm working on right now, House of Stone. And since this scene is no longer in the book in the same way, I wanted to share it with you guys. A little bit of newer writing. Again, still not the best. Take it with a grain of salt. Okay, let's read it. At the same moment that Casimir's... Oh, let's just address the names, okay? So, Casimir, Cass, that was my main... See, I don't change. That was my main character's name. It's now Kieran, okay? Casper is now Fallon, and Milena is now Figgy. I hate names. I hate them. Okay. At the same moment that Casimir's bare feet brushed up against the edge of the oxidized gutter, his mother stood 4 stories below in the kitchen. Her eyes wandered around the ornate wallpaper as she waited for the teapot to let out a cry of release from the gas fire that was lit underneath it. Footsteps bounded down every winding staircase and corridor that framed the Petrovich estate. That's another thing. Their last name is now Novak, not Petrovich. I told you, I hate names. God forbid I have to name a kid one day. That might change. Helen never changed though. See? Oh wait, oh my god, guys, it did. I just need a moment. Wow, jump scare. Helen is the mom in this version. Helen is now my main character. Okay, never mind. I'm truly doomed. Okay. Wow. This is old then. Helen ignored the way her children acted as each one called out for her. There were 7 people currently in the house. 6 bodies moved from room to room as if wandering around was going to change the current situation they were in. The cops are here now. Great, sighed Casper from the hallway, as he pushed back floor-to-ceiling curtains that Helen insisted they get 3 years ago, the last time law enforcement drove up onto their lawn. It's all over the news. Melena's voice was hushed and sounded like it came from 2 floors above Helen as the black kettle in front of her began to let out a high-pitched scream. How did anyone even know this was happening? Helen poured the boiling water into her mug and she began to tear apart mint leaves from the kitchen island. Herbs sat potted in the middle of the countertop. Some grew wildly, frantically looking for sunlight as their stems coiled around pan handles hanging from above. The mint she pulled from was in a low rectangular dish, not quite knowing where to go next. Of course it's all over the news, Helen said loud enough for just Casper to hear, as he walked into her line of sight. Tea? Well, that's great, Mother. I, too, may have some tea while Cash... Guess his nickname was Cash. Major eye roll. Just dangles from the spire and the whole town comes to watch. This is to calm my nerves. But Helen was already visibly calm. Casimir's not on the spire. He was just on the roof, and he will be fine. Well, we all know he'll be fine, said Casper, grabbing an apple from a tall matte black vase, his nerves calming slightly from just being able to pass the apple back and forth between his hands. If Helen said Cash will be fine, then he couldn't argue with the truth, but they did have to worry about the media attention. The 6 bodies that roamed the house all eventually found themselves outside, each one exiting like a wedding processional. Instead of glancing up at Cash, whose toes now firmly gripped around the sharp edge of the patinated copper. Is that how you say that word? They all strolled silently to the railing. Also, one thing is that I've said now that there are 6 bodies, like 7 people roaming throughout the house. Who are they? Who are they? I've only mentioned, this is confusing because I'm going to try to say their new names, Casper, Melena, Helen, and then Casimir's on the roof. But then like more people come outside with them, but I never mention who they are. A nightmare to edit. The Petrovich estate sat upon a hill that 2 staircases wound up the side to greet the house at. 6 bodies arranged side by side as they stared down into their yard. The fountain below them was on, barely audible between the murmur that swept through the grass. The lights weren't visible from inside since the house sat far back from the yard, too gracious to be on the ground. Red and blue lights danced off each tree and spun around each onlooker's face. What do you think they're saying about us? Asked Melena. Her long fingers were turning translucent as the cold air rushed around them. The same thing they always do, answered Casper, and then he cleared his throat for his best news anchor voice. The Petrovich family is yet again at the center of a news story here in town. One of the youngest Petrovich boys seemed to have found his way onto the roof, but not by accident, and looks ready to jump. He won't jump, Melena sounded sure. I did, said Casper. The 6 bodies belonging to the Petrovich clan stood staring at the sea of police and cameras as a gasp reverberated through them. The 7th member of the Petrovich clan sipped on her mint tea and began to stroll through the backyard grounds, being careful to inspect every flower. Not a single one turned around or looked up when the body of the 8th hit the concrete. Yeah. So this scene is really what started House of Stone for me. It was the notion of a boy jumping off a roof, knowing he would be fine for specific magical reasons. And I really ran with that. So this was like a very early musing of House of Stone. But thank you guys for letting me embarrass myself on the internet and read old, angsty writing, ramblings from creative writing classes, old early versions of a YA novel that I wrote, and now a very early version of the project that I've been talking to all of you about. Hope you enjoyed this episode. It was fun for me and slightly traumatic. Maybe I'll do some more I wish I could like read my current writing because I think it's so much better than this, but you know, that's a whole other thing. But thank you guys for watching as always. Hope you all have a great rest of your weeks, and whatever you do, keep writing.